Are the old ways still the best? This Mazda CX-30 has no turbocharger, no fancy full hybrid system, old-fashioned interior buttons and a manual gearbox, and because of that, it might just be my favourite compact SUV on sale today. Keep watching to find out why you shouldn't overlook it. Mazda really likes to do things at its own pace. Back in 2019, when the CX-30 was launched, most other manufacturers were developing their plug-in hybrid systems or laying the foundations for their electric car lineups, but Mazda seemed to be stuck in the early 2000s.
Both the CX-30 and its hatchback sister, the Mazda 3, are fantastically old school. They celebrate the sensations of driving with sharp-shifting manual gearboxes, taut steering, and rev-hungry engines that feel like they were plucked from old, warm Honda hatchbacks.
But in this brave new world of electrification, does the CX-30 still make sense? Especially now you can get a full hybrid alternative for basically the same money in the shape of the Toyota Yaris Cross.
In this video, I'll walk you through the CX-30's interior, finances, practicality, and driving experience before offering you my definitive verdict. I'm Luke Wilkinson, and you're watching another Parker's Cars review.
I'll kick things off with one of the CX-30's strongest suits, its cabin design. Look at this! You get proper physical climate controls, a traditional rotary volume knob, and this fantastic BMW iDrive style click wheel that lets you control what's happening on the infotainment screen without pawing at it like a demented ape. It's just so civilised.
And even though it's been around for 7 years now, the technology in here isn't what you'd call dated. Yeah, the screen's a bit smaller than the TV fitted to the dash of the Puma, but I like how it doesn't eat into your peripheral vision too much. Plus, you still get wireless support for Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, and every model from the second cheapest centerline trim up gets a wireless charging pad.
Then there's the build quality. I harped on about how well Mazdas are built in my recent MX-5 video, and I'm going to do it again here because, good grief, it's immaculate. The quality of the plastics and the leathers is just eons ahead of its competitors. And we just look at the shut lines on that dashboard. It isn't even in the same league as the Ford Puma, and the Ford Puma costs the same amount of money.
These seats are fantastic too. Unlike most small SUVs, you can tilt the CX-30's seat base up to provide better support for your thighs. That makes a huge difference to comfort on a long drive, and it means you don't slide forward in your seat when you brake.
If you're enjoying this video, subscribe and turn your notifications on so you don't miss our next upload. We've got plenty of sensible buying advice and a bit of prattling about coming your way in the next few weeks. Finance is next, and considering the CX-30 is a lot better built than its rivals, I don't think it's badly priced. At the time of filming, the most basic prime line specification cost £27,300, which is only about a fiver more than the most basic Toyota Yaris Cross and about 150 quid more than the Puma.
You can save yourself about 1,500 quid by opting for the Skoda Kamiq instead, and although it's more comfortable and more practical, it isn't anywhere near as good to drive, and it has a much cheaper cabin.
I don't really think it's fair to compare the CX-30 to these mainstream competitors though. To me, it's more of a rival for premium small SUVs like the Lexus LBX, and when you view it like that, it starts to look like a bit of a bargain.
Leasing prices are decent too. At the time of filming, the cheapest CX-30 deal I could find cost £244 a month. That's with a £2,200 deposit and an annual mileage limit of 6,000. By comparison, the cheapest Ford Puma I could find cost about £280 a month, and that was with a higher £3,300 deposit and a lower 5,000 mile annual limit. The Kamiq is cheaper at about £217 a month, but you're still forking out almost £3,000 for the initial rental, and you still only get a 5,000 mile annual limit.
Just remember, these leasing deals will change like the weather, so check the link in the description below for all the latest prices. One other thing worth mentioning is that Mazda sells every CX-30 with a 6-year, 100,000 mile warranty. That's second only to Kia's 7-year warranty and Toyota's 10-year warranty. So, if you buy the CX-30 with cash and flog it on in 3 years, that's a keen selling point.
On to practicality, and it's here where the CX-30 starts to falter. However, that's only because of how quickly the small SUV game has moved on. When it was launched in 2019, the CX-30 had the same amount of boot space as the Nissan Qashqai of the day, but brands like Ford and Renault have since figured out how to package more luggage volume into the same footprint by dropping the level of the boot floor. front-wheel drive CX-30s get 430 litres of boot space, which doesn't look that impressive when you compare it to the 456 litres you get from the Ford Puma. But you need to remember that 80 litres of the Puma's capacity are hiding underneath its boot board. So, unless you've got somewhere convenient to store that boot board, you've only really got 376 litres to play with day to day. In any case, there's more than enough space back there for a couple of large suitcases or a pram. Or, if you're a bit more ambitious, I recently proved you can fit half an original Mini in it. With all the seats folded flat, I managed to fit my Mini's front subframe laying down in the back of the car, and I still had enough space for its wheels and a box of spares. Practicality's a mindset, folks. My only criticism is that I'd have liked some more substantial tie-down points to lash the parts to. Because I didn't really have anything strong enough to stake them to, I spent my entire drive to the unit petrified that the subframes were going to roll into one of CX-30's door cards and carve a massive chunk out of one of them.
There isn't a huge amount of passenger space back here, mind. That seat is in my driving position and I've only got about an inch of room between my knee and the seat back. Headroom is equally tight, and because the car's waistline's quite high and these rear windows are pretty small, there isn't all that much light back here. It's nowhere near as claustrophobic as a Nissan Juke, but still, bear it in mind if you've got kids.
Moving on to how the CX-30 drives, and it's here where Mazda differentiates itself the most from its competitors. Most other small family SUVs completely isolate their drivers with overly assisted steering systems and easy riding automatic gearboxes. But the CX-30 requires you to get stuck into the experience.
Depending on your relationship with cars, you're either going to like this or loathe it. You really need to be on it to get the best from the CX-30, even in normal everyday driving, and if you're not a petrol head, that can get really tiring really quickly.
You can blame the CX-30's engine for that. Yes, it's a 2-litre 4-cylinder petrol with 186 horsepower and 240 Nm of torque, which, on paper at least, is competitive for the class. The top-spec Volkswagen T-Roc, for example, only has 150 horsepower and 250 Nm of torque. But the CX-30's power is a lot less accessible.
I'll illustrate my point with a demonstration. I'm currently following our videographer Tobias in his 1.5-litre Skoda Kodiaq. We're both beetling down a B road at 40 mile an hour in 5th gear. When I flash my lights, we're both going to accelerate as hard as we can without changing down. Watch what happens. Right, you ready? Go on, go. The reason why Tobias screamed off over the horizon for is because the turbocharged engine in his Kodiaq is working at its best from as little as 1500 RPM, whereas the engine in my Mazda needs to be wrung out to at least 4000 RPM before it'll even start to accelerate. That means I'm left sitting here like a brick unless I change down.
This is a constant source of irritation, especially on the motorway. You've got absolutely no power in reserve when you're cruising along at 60 mile an hour in 6th. And you need to shift down at least 2 gears to put the engine back on the boil and gain any kind of performance. It's not what you'd call relaxing, and nobody really drives their car like that in the real world. Not least a practical family SUV.
However, if you do, you'll find you can have an awful lot of fun in the CX-30. This manual gearbox is a proper corker, which is just as well considering how often you'll be using it. The clutch is an excellent weight too, and Mazda's drivetrain won't punish you for hammering through cogs like a racing driver. Skoda's manual gearboxes, by contrast, don't really like to be rushed.
The steering's great as well. It's heavy enough to not feel nervous at high speeds, but light enough to not be tiring around town. There's even a faint whiff of road feel, which is something you don't really get from the equivalent Toyota or Volkswagen SUV. The only other car that gets close is the Ford Puma.
Mazda hasn't strayed too far down the sporty route though. The CX-30 is still good fun to drive without being overly punishing. It has a comfortable ride, it's quiet at speed, and it's even reasonably efficient. When you're not chasing the rev limit to just overtake a cyclist, that is.
I've been driving this CX-30 for about a month now, and I've been averaging about 40 mpg. That's pretty good considering how much I need to kick its head in just to keep up with traffic. Still, if fuel economy is of paramount importance to you, you'd probably prefer the Toyota Yaris Cross Hybrid. When we last tested one, we got around 60 mpg from it without really trying.
If you're interested in a CX-30, my advice would be to get a long test drive before signing a finance agreement. If you find its lack of low-down power annoying for a day, you're going to hate driving it long term.
I love it, but I'm a petrol head who yearns for that old school driving experience, and I enjoy searching through the gearbox for the CX-30's poke. But not all folk think like me. You've been warned.
At the start of this video, I asked whether the decidedly old school Mazda CX-30 still made sense in our rapidly electrifying new car market. And now I've reached the end of this review, I'm faced with a bit of a problem.
If you approach it from a purely statistical standpoint, you probably shouldn't buy a Mazda CX-30 because you can get a Toyota Yaris Cross for £5 less. And because the Yaris Cross will do an easy 60 mpg in the real world, it'll keep saving you money the longer you own it.
But buying a car isn't always about numbers on a spreadsheet. There's a lot more to consider, and sometimes it's okay to spend a bit more cash on running costs to get behind the wheel of something that you look forward to driving, and that's exactly what the CX-30 offers.
The CX-30 is much more engaging to drive than the Toyota Yaris Cross or the Skoda Kamiq, especially when specified with a manual gearbox. Its cabin is also far superior to any of its rivals in terms of both build quality and ergonomics. I find it refreshing to not need to interact with a touchscreen.
If it was my money and I had to buy a compact SUV, I'd be heading straight down to my local Mazda dealership to put a deposit down on a CX-30 because it's a practical car that manages to satisfy my inner petrol head. But what do you think? Are you sold on the Mazda CX-30 or would you rather have one of its rivals? Let me know in the comments section below.